I registered as a Republican when the local Democratic leadership announced they would not be supporting any white candidates.
Wow.
And so someone might go, oh, you're a registered Republican, you're a racist. I go, I only registered as a Republican because of the racist shit I was hearing from the local Democratic leadership. Oh, that's your position? Then I'm going to go register with the other party because chances are those guys are going to like me better anyway. I don't think it should be offensive to say trans women are trans women, trans men are trans men. Why is it that when someone's transitioning to the other gender, they do it by adopting all the societal gendered stereotypes that I thought we were supposed to say was just a construct? I'm a big guy. Someone explain how we got out of that hotel without someone calling the police if anything this girl said was true. Everything out of her mouth was a complete lie. I don't know that I can survive being accused of this.
I'm conscious people listening will be going, or watching will be saying, what did he do?
Oh, you know what?
Aaron Smith-Levin, welcome to my show in your home.
Well, this is the inauguration of the SPTV studio, so...
The inauguration of a beautiful friendship.
Welcome to my studio. Welcome to your show.
Thank you. So, Jordan Peterson, what a start. I'm going to get you cancelled today. That's what this is all about. Jordan Peterson told you that woke culture is more dangerous than Scientology. Whether that's actually true, I don't know. But do you see parallels in aspects of the authoritarian left?
Okay, the authoritarian left. Well, I hope you don't mind if I chew on this for a little bit. Because me personally... And this is the episode where you try to get me canceled and I dance around like a politician. When I think, I generally don't think of the authoritarian left without also thinking about the authoritarian right. And I don't even say that to be wishy-washy. But I know when Jordan Peterson says what he says, he's thinking about the authoritarian left. I personally see the parallels between Scientology and both sides.
Well, let's start with your channel because we put up a picture on my channel, like we're going to do something together. People know that obviously I do a lot on Scientology. You were in Scientology. We're going to get into that as well. And they know that I've now got this other channel, Heretics, which is this, where I discuss a lot of stuff that is anti-woke, as well as anti-other things or whatever it might be. And how was the reaction from some of the sort of more extreme people?
Yeah, so last night when I put up a photo of the two of us in this studio, because you and I have overlapping audiences that are huge fans of the both of us. I was like, oh, I'm so disappointed that you're going to sit down or spending time with such a hateful bigot, such as Andrew Gold. And I'm like, Andrew, like, I've known Andrew, like, well, we're YouTube buddies. Like, we've grown up, our channels grew up on YouTube together. You're not a hateful bigot. And I've never had that reaction to anything else I've ever posted on my channel before. Now, that's probably because your new channel, Heretics, does... there's sort of a theme of anti-woke content. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah. Not necessarily intentionally, but it's sort of, that's the way it's gone.
Yeah.
So what is that? Is there a sort of feeling of, to me what it is, and let me know if you think the same, it's a feeling of if you think differently from what my dogma is, and you're right to point out that this is on the far right as well. The reason I cover the left is because I don't know anyone on the far right. All my friends I've grown up with, who I'm obviously trying to annoy now, are either centrist or they're far left, and that's why I do this. It's much more interesting to me. Doing the far right, it's like, yeah, of course, my family are Jewish. There's the Nazis. There's all that stuff. Like, of course, but it just doesn't interest me enough because I want to annoy my friends more. So that kind of, if you're thinking differently, you're out.
Yeah.
Is that something you recognize? And are you fed up with that?
Absolutely, and absolutely. What's interesting for me is that because Scientology, my experience with Scientology, when I think about it, I more closely align it with the authoritarian, conservative, moralizing, judging bad behavior. I mean, I got myself into a similar situation recently where the other board members of the Aftermath Foundation voted me off for what they publicly said was not adhering to traditional spiritual values.
Wow. They used that word. They think because this is just to fill people in, this is the board that you were on, the Aftermath Foundation.
Well, that Luis Garcia and I created.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you were kicked off because you've been a bit naughty.
Well, I'm if you put it that way, that's the thing is like in order to consider the behavior naughty, you would have to align yourself with that very conservative right way of thinking of, we look down this kind of stuff. And so I associate the worst parts of Scientology more with the far right wing than I do with the left wing. For me, what's interesting is seeing the parallels on both sides, which is why, and honestly, this kind of comes back to why on my own channel, I have a no politics rule, is because first of all, it's so inflammatory. The right doesn't want to think it's like the left doesn't want to think it's like the right. Most people don't want to know what your damn political opinions are. And my opinions, whereas everyone has political opinions, I grew up in a cult. Any opinions that I have, I don't have so closely that I go, other people must hear these opinions because I must share them. But everyone, like everyone, I love talking about all this stuff with my friends and ever. So like everyone has opinions, but I don't talk about them on my channel because I go, why would anyone care about my opinions? I'm fascinated about the kind of interviews that you do on your channel, because the kind of interviews that you do, you know, the audience watches that, and like a lot of people watch that stuff and go, well, I agree with that, but I would never want to say that.
Yeah.
You know,
and why wouldn't they want to say it?
Well, right, because they don't want to be canceled. They don't want to get the social backlash. And you know, people will say there's no cancel culture. There's accountability culture. I can make arguments on you know, both ways on this. So like, I guess I do get a little when you ask, do I see similarities between Scientology and the woke left? I do bristle a little bit, because I'm like, well, yeah, I could answer that question, but then people are going to think I'm like hyper targeted or focused on that, when personally I'm not. But I'm like, you know, this is your podcast, this is your show, and I'll answer whatever questions that you have. Yeah. So like, what's interesting to me is to see groups of people, and I guess for the sake of this conversation, we'll say people who identify as being on the far left. Do I have permission to ramble a little bit?
Please ramble.
Okay, good. Because even this thing of calling something woke, it's interesting because woke has become a bad word. And most of the people in my life who use that word use that as a bad word. When I use it, I use it as a bad word. And yet it didn't start out as a bad word. And so many things progress that way.
Well, Scientology is not supposed to be a bad word. It didn't start out that way. And people, I guess any kind of cult, isn't it? I mean, look, the alt-right don't think that they're bad either. They also started an ideology that they think is right. But if anyone talks about the alt-right, they tend to be talking about it derogatively, whatever that word is.
Derogatorily?
Exactly.
And so in this conversation, and conversations like this, well, I'll just speak for myself. When I refer to something derogatorily as woke, I feel like what I'm really doing is criticizing what I find to be contemptible behavior on the part of people who self-identify as woke. But those people who self-identify don't think they're self-identifying as something bad or harmful. They're thinking of all the good aspects of woke, which is trying to understand different circumstances, you know, how what does it say? Culture, nurture versus nature. They're talking about, you know, the facts of how someone's upbringing and the environment they're raised in and the socioeconomic conditions and different racial biases affect outcomes. And is there anything we can do in society to make those things more fair? So there's the positive aspects of what woke was supposed to be. And then there is what is now the contemptible behavior on behalf of people who self-identify as woke. Mm-hmm. So even these terms themselves mean different things to different people when they say them. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah. Not only do I agree, I'm trying to think, okay, but isn't it different, the woke thing because of the righteousness? But then how you just explained the right side, that conservative side, is also very righteous, isn't it? It's like, we have the true truth, and so we will kick you out if you don't say it. And I wonder if one of the interesting things is we're here right now in Florida, which is known as a Republican state, I think. Am I right in saying that? Or
well,
right?
It's at least known for that. I mean, I think the actual constituency is surprisingly 50-50. But if you look at the elected leadership, I think it skews very heavily to the right based on a certain gerrymandering things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you'll be more used to having like a friend who might be openly centre-right or something than I would be in London. This sort of
probably
somewhere in London, you know, where I grew up, and around all these people studying literature or whatever it is at university who are able to have these luxury beliefs. They're all woke and left wing. I don't know anyone who would say a lot of those things that you'd hear in Florida, like gun control, all those kinds of things. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I'm probably annoyed day by day by people who I see as woke. Yeah. I don't know anyone who's the other way, whereas you might get annoyed by people who are too far the other way over here. Just give me a minute. I wanted to show you The Psychology of Secrets, My Adventures with Murderers, Cults and Influencers. It's basically a true crime kind of thing where I go and meet lots of culty people. The first bit of the book, I'm going to read a bit. There is an audio book that I read the whole thing of, right? She doesn't know it, but Melissa will be a murderer in 10 minutes. Just 20 years old and studying at a university somewhere in the UK, she is returning alone from a night out with friends. As she angles down an alleyway on her route home, she's confronted by two men. One of them lurks in the shadows, and the other creeps towards her. He impedes her way, insisting she stay with them. He reeks of beer and cigarettes, and she feels sick. She wants to get to the end of the alley, but he stands between her and freedom. That is one of the stories told to me by my subscriber, one of my viewers, one of you guys. I put a lot of your secrets in there. I had conversations with some of you guys and asked you about how the secrets made you feel. The whole book is about what secrets do to you physically, why we keep them, and what kind of things you can do to get secrets out of your friends, or how to become more trustworthy. I did a lot of research. I wrote this over a period of 2 or 3 years. It is published by one of the biggest publishers in the world, Pan Macmillan, and it's purple and really kitschy, so it will look great in your living room or as a gift for friends and stuff like that. You can pre-order it now. There is a link in the description. Please do, because otherwise no one will, because I have been banned from appearing at all different kinds of events to talk about it. So I have to actually just use my YouTubers. So if you guys don't buy it, no one will actually hear about it. So that, although a lot of you have done, so I do really appreciate that. That's The Psychology of Secrets, My Adventures with Cults, Murderers, Cults, and Influencers.
I have a very even mix of friends, and I just have to make sure those friends don't hang out with each other.
Absolutely.
But I want to make sure I'm not totally dancing and avoiding this question, because, well, a moment ago you mentioned the righteousness, the self-righteousness that I think in a lot of the conversations that you hear people attribute to the wokest of the woke. The conservative, and I'm hesitant to sound like I'm painting all conservatives or all Christians with the same brush. It's just kind of how my mind thinks, right or wrong. The super conservative Christians are just as, if not more, righteous. Mm-hmm. I wish there was a word for conservative wokeism.
I've started saying that because obviously, okay, the channel went a bit anti-woke. It wasn't necessarily the intention. The intention was to be heretical in any such way. And in my friendship groups, it is heretical to say, hang on, trans women are not women. That's like the most heretical thing you can say. So that's the thing. However, in doing this, I've discovered the joys or not joys of the other side, of people who are, for example, the gender critical ultras, who agree with me that a trans woman is not actually a woman, but will not entertain any kind of platforming or conversation with a trans person. Anything like it, they always say, hold the line. And this also feels quite cultish to me. And they will immediately excommunicate anybody who doesn't have exactly their opinion. So I call that woke right, or the woke conservative. Is the same. And in that sense, I suppose I'm being a bit maybe giving myself license with what words mean. But I'm going with woke, meaning my view is the righteous one.
That's right.
And if you have a different one, you're out.
Right. I'm the mine is the enlightened, educated position, and yours is the ignorant, propaganda-held position.
That's it.
Right. There's two things I want to say, just in response to what you just said, and this is fun to talk about because it's stuff I would never talk about on my channel.
Yeah.
For my entire life, I've always been no party affiliation, and if someone looks me up right now, they'll see that I'm a registered Republican. 2 years ago, when I ran for Clearwater City Council, I had every intention of just running for no party affiliation. Mm-hmm. But I expected to, because I considered myself a centrist, and because I considered that I was running mainly on a Scientology centric platform here in Clearwater, Florida. It's a big deal. I expected to get support from both sides of the aisle, especially since Clearwater City Council elections are nonpartisan. By definition. I registered as a Republican when the local Democratic leadership announced they would not be supporting any white candidates.
Wow.
And so someone might go, oh, you're a registered Republican, you're a racist. I go, I only registered as a Republican because of the racist shit I was hearing from the local Democratic leadership. And I was so pissed off. I'm a very petty guy.
Yeah, I know.
Oftentimes.
I talk about
as
that.
You know.
I tell everyone.
I said, oh, that's your position? Then I'm going to go register with the other party because chances are those guys are going to like me better anyway.
Did you see that Elon Musk? It was actually from Swipe Right, his Twitter, Colin Wright, and it's this graphic. You may have seen, a lot of people will have seen it, where it's got a picture of someone who's on the right and someone who's on the far left, and then there's you, and you're like left of center, and then that person on the left's got a mouthpiece that's in the next picture, just saying "you're a bigot" to the guy who's center left, and then the next picture is the guy center left is now center right. The guy on the left is just upset, and the guy on the right's just laughing at like what's happened here. You've been moved by that madness.
Yeah. And so, honestly, I just have been too lazy to go back to the DMV and undo my registration because I don't really give a damn about being a registered Republican. Like, I see, and again, I don't mean to be like a wishy-washy fence sitter when I see this. I see craziness on both sides. Now people are going to go, how dare you make what do they call it?
Equivalence.
Yes, how dare you make an equivalence? Guys, I don't talk about politics on my channel because I don't care enough about the various arguments and the recriminations and the finger pointing. I'm not a political guy. Everybody has beliefs. I don't talk about mine because no matter what you say, you're going to offend someone. And my audience comes to me for Scientology. I thought this would be a fun conversation to have because you're a very good friend of mine. We've grown up on YouTube and, people together, and people should be comfortable having conversations like this. Certainly they have conversations like this in their own home. And honestly, it's fun to start having some of these conversations in public. But I've seen people in the dark recesses of the internet be like, oh, he's a Republican. It's like, because the Democrats were being super racist. But it's not like I sit here going, it's not like I'm sitting here going, the Democrats are the true racists and there's no racism on the Republican side. What happened to me was just very, very specific. I don't necessarily extrapolate that one situation out, although many do. And I like hearing conversations and arguments and debates where people are arguing about this stuff. I don't know. I do find political conversations very entertaining. I find them informative. I find them to be growth opportunities. I just don't have personally held beliefs that I hold so closely that I want to spend any time arguing about them. But now look, you've done a lot of trans-related material on your channel, which in my opinion is what people were talking about when they responded to my YouTube post with, oh, he's a bigot. I'm not going to be someone who pretends to have a lot of trans friends. There's only one person I consider who's ever been in my life who's an openly trans person who I actually know and am friends with and like. And do you mind if I give her a shout out?
Yeah, please.
Hollywood Aja. She's a TikToker. She's a streamer. She's a Scientology protester. She is the loveliest, kindest, most beautiful soul one of the most I've only even spent a short amount of time with her. She's, I think on TikTok she says post-op trans woman.
Okay.
If you met her, you'd like, this is a woman.
Okay.
I would never ever dream of doing anything to misgender her or dead name her. Thank God I don't know what her name used to be or anything like that. And so I go, for me, that's a positive experience with a trans person, and I would want to respect that person and protect her rights and whatever. But I think you could have a whole panel of trans people and go, what statement is more accurate to you? Trans women are trans women, or trans women are women? Like, which statement feels more true to you, or are there agendas behind these statements? Because I don't think it should be offensive to say trans women are trans women, trans men are trans men. I mean, isn't that, if you are a trans woman, wouldn't you say, I'm a trans woman? And no, don't say that about yourself. Trans women are women. Well, no, trans women are trans women. Why should that what is wrong with that? Who came along and decided that was offensive? Now, I feel like I know what the answer would be. Well, trans women are women doesn't mean they're literally women. It means as a society, we should treat them as if they are. And I go, well, then have the statement be, trans women should be treated as if they're women. Don't make the statement, trans women are women. Why are you trying to weaponize language? And honestly, I'd rather have that conversation with actual trans women, because I feel like you'd get a healthy portion of them saying, I'm totally fine saying trans women are trans women. What are we fighting about here?
Well, some people do believe they are literally women. So I did a poll on my channel, and it was something like 12%, which is relatively low, but it's not insignificant. It's not insignificant, given there were like thousands of people voting, who genuinely believe there is zero difference, that trans women are women. And then you go, do you really in your mind believe that, or are you trying to make a point with language, as you say?
I don't believe they believe that. Do you believe they believe that?
I think some people haven't thought deeply enough about it. And often this is the problem. We were talking earlier, just off air, about freedoms and what it is to be free, and how taking freedom away from someone, or giving someone freedom is always taking freedom away from another person, or at least it usually is. And that's a really difficult concept for a lot of us to get our heads around. And so when I'm in a place like Argentina, where they're not as far ahead, or I don't know if ahead's the right word, but they haven't gone far down this rabbit hole about, okay, trans women literally are women and so can be in female prisons and female sports teams and things like that. So they are very defensive if you mention trans people, because they want to defend them, because they're back at that time we were 20 years ago, where trans people were being maybe killed or made fun of. They couldn't have friends at school. They were just completely isolated and ostracized, which was horrible. So they're at that point and they're going, what? No. But then you say to them, no, but in the UK, like, they can literally go into women's prisons in some places. Like in Scotland, they're really pushing for that. And then people are going, oh, no. Well, I don't mean that. No. So I wonder if it's just a case of, like I was saying about the gender critical ultras with their hold the line and no one. I think it's just that purity spiral. And you start by saying, okay, trans women are trans women, but then you want to fit in with your group. You've basically said trans women are trans women. You've already now said, I'm not with those centrists and right wing, I'm on the far left woke kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they start saying they are literally women. Well, you have to start saying that now.
You and I had a chat about this a couple days ago, and I want to bring it up. My thoughts on this right now. For someone, and I wish I could have this conversation with an actual trans, male or female, who truly believes that saying trans women are women or trans women are men is not just an expression of how society should respect that person as an individual, but it's a statement of physical fact or something like biological fact. I would want to say to them, okay, if you're saying I was assigned male at birth, but I was actually born a woman. I was actually a woman when I was born, but I was assigned male at birth. I would want to ask them, when you say I, are you referring to your brain or your spirit? Are you saying your soul is female, or are you actually saying that on a biological, neurological, chemical level, you're female? Because if you're saying you have a female brain, that's regression into the problematic gender science of the 40s and 50s, if I'm not mistaken. I'm no historian here. I grew up in a cult. But back when you're saying, that goes back to the type of science of like, no, women are inherently and genetically less than, or like that was, I think that was some of the, please, fact check me on this. I'm only as good as the information I have, and I grew up in a cult. Okay. Mm-hmm. So like this idea of, men were created and meant to lead society, and women are meant just to support men. And somehow that's like biologically true. That, to me, that's where you're going back to when you start talking about male brains and female brains.
Is what you're saying then, if a man says, no, I'm actually a woman, and they tend to then get longer nails and longer hair and wear makeup and dresses, and I've asked time and time again and said, no, but what apart from that stuff, because that stuff's quite misogynist, to like the idea of woman is makeup, long hair and long nails, and that's it?
Well, as someone who's a straight white male, that is a question I've always asked myself. I go, wait a second, why is it that when someone's transitioning to the other gender, they do it by adopting all the societal gendered stereotypes that I thought we were supposed to say was just a construct? Now, I know a lot of the audience are going to like right now be like, how in the hell are two straight white males having the conversation about the validity of trans, I don't know what you want to call it. What would you even call it? The ideology. And well, I'm certainly not having this conversation so that people think they should refer to us. Well, I think it's helpful to just be open and honest about the thoughts and the questions that people like me or us, but I'll speak for me, have on this thing. Because what has confused me is that when people like me ask the questions or say the things that I'm saying, there's a certain percentage of people that'll go, you're transphobic, which to me means you hate trans people. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, on the one hand, I hardly know any trans people, but the one person I've had the opportunity to actually get to know, love her to death. She's absolutely amazing. There's nothing about this person you would ever want to not support or love or help or do anything to make her life as great as possible. It cannot be wrong just to have questions or thoughts or beliefs or to feel like even I'm going to say transism, transism is somehow being used by some people in a weaponized way in the culture war. Now that might be a reaction to the fact that the far conservative right intolerant.
Well, they're transphobic.
Would be putting them. They are
in the traditional sense.
Yes,
potentially, not all of them, of course, but some of them might be.
Sure,
yeah.
And homophobic.
Yeah,
like look, I grew up in an age where insulting someone by calling them gay. Can we say the F word?
Don't say.
Okay, I went in school, grade school. I grew up in the suburbs of South Jersey and Philadelphia. We grew up where just throwing around those words as insults was just how we were raised.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that when I say raised, I don't even mean by my parents, by the people we went to school with. It was like that was the whole culture. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But also, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because things do change, not everywhere. They don't change everywhere. There still is a lot of homophobia. And by the way, I just interviewed Andrew Doyle, who is convinced, and this is, some people agree with this and some don't, that a lot of the trans ideology does come from a homophobic place. He believes that a lot of the people, especially children who are transitioning, while some of them are autistic, some of them are children who are looking to be able to control their lives better, and it's like an easy option, a bit like exorcism or religion or something. It's some sort of big thing that can happen. You feel like you've got control over your life, but that a lot of them turn out to be gay, and they're confused at that time. It's a very difficult time in your teenage years, and that it's actually a very homophobic thing to say this person's gay. If we change their body, change their genitals, that they are no longer not conforming to the gay stuff. And that is something we know happens in a lot of countries that are quite religious, extremely religious. I believe India and Pakistan, for example. If you are gay, you have a much better chance of survival if you try to change your sex, or at least pretend you're a woman. And so you have gay couples where one of them will be the woman, and for all intents and purposes, for appearances, they are the woman in that case. So he is right that at least a percentage of people do it because of homophobic practices.
In that case, I imagine they would have to be secretly pretending to be the other gender, because there's no way it's more acceptable in those societies to be trans than
I think
gay.
it is.
Really?
Yeah.
That is incredible.
It's something we need to look into more.
That is counterintuitive.
Yeah. Well, Andrew Doyle really believes that he's gay himself, and he really feels that there is a lot of homophobia still, and that trans is a way to eradicate gay people. Well, let's look at an example,
Really?
a practical example of that. If you look at one of the things the UN has tweeted, trans lesbians are lesbians. They tweeted that out. And it's bizarre, but the reason that's become quite important in the culture wars is because there are apps where lesbians are able to find one another. It's not easy to find another lesbian, right? Unless you go to a lesbian bar, of course. But that's, I know from experience as a lesbian. And by the way, your point before that, some people will be watching saying, two white men saying, as soon as someone says that, I have no interest in anything they have to say. As soon as somebody says, because of who these people are, I'm not interested in what they're going to say. I mean, I can accept that, of course, you want people from varying viewpoints, and of course, you want people with experience of different kinds of things. Like, of course, you want that. But if you say, I'm going to dismiss what these people say because of what their skin color is, with no knowledge of you and I and our history and anything else that might be relevant to this case, I can't be bothered to listen to those people. But I was just going to say, to finish that point, the lesbian one, they go through the app, and it's 90% men, or trans women, as you might call them, still, pre-op. And then they take offense if a lesbian doesn't want to have sex with them. It's like they've got a problem with the penis.
Wow. Okay, so now imagine being, I think I got the language right on this, a cis lesbian.
Yeah.
Okay. You're assigned female at birth. You are female. You identify as female, and you're gay. And for a long time, you have been, part of the out group in society, meaning in groups, out groups. Okay, and now you're looking for a partner on dating apps, and would you be called a bigot for going, okay, is this the profile of a person who is also a gay, assigned female at birth, cis lesbian, or is this a trans, what was born as a straight male who is now a gay trans woman, and now you're going to be called a bigot for wanting to know, or having a preference,
for wanting to be a lesbian or being a lesbian,
and not wanting to be with a trans woman.
Yeah, not only that, but some companies for lesbian apps have removed the filter, so you can't filter for a cis lesbian because they believe that filtering is transphobic. Okay,
interesting. I can't. Yeah, okay, back to a point you made about 2 minutes ago. It's my hope that anyone who considers themselves to be not necessarily a part of our in-group, I don't know, straight white cis males, would listen to this going, maybe these guys will tell us what people like them actually think, or the questions they actually have. I feel like what would be problematic is if we were sitting here telling people how they must think and how they must feel, instead of letting them know, well, this is how people like us think and feel, and the questions we have, and maybe the unresolved issues. Because I got to tell you, no matter how I feel about anything, I feel like I'm also open to, I don't feel like I'm stuck in my beliefs. I feel like I'm open to new information. Well, now, maybe we all tell ourselves that, we pat ourselves on the back, but that is how I feel.
Well, this is the point though, because when did you last find somebody who had different views from you, even if they were extremely different, and said, I'm not going to listen to them anymore, I'm blocking them, you're out, basically, and try to Twitter pile on? Like, I see people with totally different views from me, including on this trans thing, who really believe trans women are women. I find it baffling to understand, but there is nothing in me that thinks I want to excommunicate them. I want them out. I want them blocked. I want no one listening to them. Even Jeremy Corbyn is an example. He's a leader of the Labour Party, he was in the UK, and some people believe he was very anti-Semitic. Other people say he's not. My personal belief is that he's so ideologically captured by the left that naturally led to anti-Semitism. That's just my belief. But other people have different views on it. And I would never say, like, he mustn't run for office. I would never go and throw an egg at him or whatever it might be, or stop him being able to do his thing. And I also understand, like, he doesn't think he's anti-Semitic. He's got a different viewpoint. Let's listen, let's debate. So in Scientology, just because we've gone for half an hour, we've hardly mentioned it, haven't we? And we have to a little bit, because one of the reasons I didn't want to focus it on the beginning, because so much of both of our audiences, even on the new channel, already know your story. They've heard us speak so many times before, so I didn't want to lead with that. But okay, I think that trans women are women. That's a thought-terminating cliche. This is something we just have to believe and not think about it too much. I think the equivalent in 1984 by George Orwell is 2 + 2 = 5. Were there things in Scientology that are like that? Like, you have to say this statement and you have to believe it.
The infallibility of L. Ron Hubbard is just one of the first things that comes to mind.
That's the creator.
Yes. And it's funny because almost everything I'm going to say about this is, to me, obvious with the benefit of hindsight. But at the time, I probably would have denied that these things were true or a thing. Like, for example, Scientologists say, we don't worship L. Ron Hubbard. Like, there's not a Scientologist in the world who will say, oh, yeah, we worship L. Ron Hubbard. Of course. Because people will go, Scientology calls itself a religion. There's worship in all religions. So people assume, well, if he's the guy that created your religion, you must worship him. And a Scientologist would bristle at that. What? No, that's not that kind of religion. We don't worship L. Ron Hubbard. It wasn't until I went to a meeting of Baptist ministers who were having a meeting for the purpose of discussing Scientology, because they see it as satanic. And I saw how they treated the Bible, because I didn't grow up in church, a real church. I saw how they treated the Bible. I saw how they quoted from it. I saw how they knew it verse and paragraph and page. They quoted it just like we quoted L. Ron Hubbard. And they saw it as the infallible source of truth. And I said, oh, this was after I was already out of Scientology for years. I said, oh shit, we do worship L. Ron Hubbard. Or even if we think we don't, we treat his word the way these guys treat the word of God. And we convinced ourselves we don't worship this guy. Like, we brainwashed ourselves to believe we didn't worship L. Ron Hubbard when it's not true. The only way a Scientologist could say we don't worship L. Ron Hubbard is by saying we don't pray to him. Scientologists don't pray. And if you have to pray to someone to worship them, then fine. You don't worship L. Ron Hubbard. But in every other respect of that word, you treat L. Ron Hubbard exactly like evangelicals treat Jesus and God. Full stop. So, your original question was there one of these thought-stopping cliches? And I realized I didn't respond with an actual cliche. There's what would Ron do?
Okay, is there?
Yes. And when I didn't know that what would Jesus do was the thing.
Oh, wow.
So when I first in the real world saw a bumper sticker that said, what would Jesus do? I kid you not. My thought was, they stole our thing.
I can't believe that. That's great. That's great. Well, okay. Another one is, I suppose, I think some people I've spoken to who were or are in Scientology appear to worship Tom Cruise. I know you're not supposed to in Scientology. And I think, I had another one I was just thinking of. Oh, yeah, well, Tom Cruise's assertion that you can be a Scientologist and a Christian and a Jew, and it's just you're supposed to believe that, and it's just not true.
Scientologists actually aren't expected to believe that. All Scientologists know that's not true, but they do know it's what you're supposed to say.
Interesting.
All Scientologists know that's not true. The only way they could maybe trick themselves into thinking that is they don't know what it actually means to call yourself a Christian. Like some ignorant Scientologist who grew up in a cult and has not had proper education, particularly in Christianity, might think that as long as you believe in the 10 Commandments, you can call yourself a Christian. Okay, well, I'm not, fact check me on this. There's nothing in the 10 Commandments that are particularly objectionable. Is that wrong? Is there stuff there that's problematic and hasn't aged well?
Shall I look them up?
Thou
You keep
shalt
talking.
not kill. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not. I don't know. Is there anything of?
You keep talking while I look up the 10 Commandments and find.
But my point is, I do believe there might be some Scientologists out there that are so ignorant of what it actually means to be a Christian that somehow they believe that if you love thy neighbor, it's okay to call yourself a Christian. And you go, no, do you believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and died on the cross for your sins? And that there's a heaven and that you get salvaged through accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior and you go to heaven when you die. You don't believe that? Then I'm sorry, you're not a Christian. You're not a Christian.
No.
You can identify as a Christian,
But that means nothing.
but you're wrong.
Well, this goes back to my point that identifying
Don't
as
do it. Don't do it. No.
identifying as a thing does not a thing make of you. Okay, well, you shall not make idols, I suppose. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Okay, only the popular ones. I only know the popular ones.
That's the top 10. That's the 10
Thou
commandments.
shalt not. Does it? Thou shalt not murder.
That's 6.
Oh.
Adultery 7. Shouldn't steal. That's 8. That's really good.
Is love thy neighbor even on the 10 Commandments, or is that just a Christian saying?
You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So don't lie about your neighbor.
Love thy neighbor comes from somewhere. I know it does.
But that's a really good one. You should not bear false witness against your neighbor, because that speaks to cancel culture, I think. If I think of any kind of authoritarian government, on the right it could be the Nazis, on the left it could be the Stasi. I'm not just having a go at Germans today, but lovely Germans. They're good at other stuff.
You did live in Germany, so you can talk about it.
I did, and just this morning or yesterday I saw there was a great Twitter thing of a German guy who goes around cities finding people who have committed parking offences and informing the government, and that's like his thing. And he's the most German guy ever. And he's like, yeah, I just think that.
Wait, this is real?
This is a real thing.
Oh,
it's a real thing. He goes around and people were like questioning him on the news, like, oh, so why do you do this? He's like, well, people must, the law is important and we must follow the law. This is very important for me.
I'm just following orders.
I'm just following orders. There you go. Follow. But that, the Stasi, for example, used to like put pornography in people's letterboxes, like hanging out. So because pornography was like the thing that was the worst thing you could be accused of doing, which is interesting because I think that's where the left and the right would agree. Like, oh, you've been naughty and watched porn and things like that. You're bad.
Would the far left feel that way?
That's
today?
just the Stasi, the far left.
Oh.
I know what you're saying. There are parts of the left today, the intersectional postmodernist left, who would be like, yes, all the more, have as much of that as you can, get it into your veins and make it weird and add alphabet things to it and whatever. But the Stasi were very keen on like showing off that other people had done that. They even used to get loads of their people who worked for them to go and watch the premiere of a new big pornography film.
Why?
Together, so they could later use that against them if they ever spoke out. So the Stasi are a great comparison to Scientology. And I've written a whole thing comparing the Stasi to Scientology in my new book, The Psychology of Secrets. But that's you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, because they all just everybody started just reporting on their neighbors. Most amazing thing. Is that another bit? I mean, that's part of woke culture. That's part of the far right. Is that part of Scientology?
That's a really good point. I mean, reporting on your neighbors is one of the most important parts of Scientology culture.
There you go.
I mean, one of the most important policy letters in Scientology is called knowledge reports. And there's another one called ethics chits that gives like 50 different types of chits that all members are expected to turn in to the organization on each other. And it's made clear that if it is found that someone was guilty of committing an offense and you knew about it and hadn't reported it, you are guilty of the same crime the other person is guilty of. You've got, spouses reporting on spouses. Spouses in Scientology cannot speak privately with each other and expect each others to keep their secrets. I mean, it is... It's one of the craziest things in hindsight to think that we as Scientologists, now former Scientologists, all were involved in and thought that was ethical, moral, virtuous behavior, as opposed to some of the most degenerate, contemptible, low-life way of existing, is that you're going to turn in people you love to an organization for the greater good. For the greater good. You could say so much about how the greater good is used to justify pretty much anything. And I do think that both sides of the extremist spectrum probably feel that they're all doing it for the greater good.
Of course.
Don't you think?
Did you ever turn people in, close friends?
I was the best at it.
I was so sure.
Best at it.
I was sure you were about to just absolve yourself of responsibility because you made a face that I thought was like, I was the one who didn't do it.
No. I wrote, particularly, I was the best at it for my whole Scientology career, but for the 4 years that I was in the Sea Org in Los Angeles, I have to this day copies of every single one of the maybe 500 reports that I wrote on my juniors, my seniors, my whatever you call people who are the same as you. I don't know.
My cohorts.
I don't know. My vocabulary is failing me. Because I joined the Sea Org with a laptop and was allowed to use that laptop as my work computer for the entire time. And I left the Sea Org with that laptop, and I have every report, dispatch, request, weekly financial planning. I have everything. And if I was focused and disciplined enough, I would make it a whole video series. I've done a few videos just reading the reports that I wrote on other Sea Org members.
Incredible. I was speaking to someone recently, a journalist whose father was from like a Soviet country or somewhere there or thereabouts, and they had these kinds of communist rule reporting on one another. And you can now go back and find all the reports that were written about you at the time. You can do this with the Stasi in Germany as well. And he didn't want to go back to find out which of his neighbors and friends had reported on him because it would have changed. It would have
crushed him?
Yeah, and also because he understands that they had to do it or they were brainwashed to do it. So it would colour his opinion of them even though he understands it. How do you feel about others who reported on you?
The thing in Scientology is when you turn in a report on someone, you send a copy to the person you're reporting on.
Oh my God.
Usually. There's one type of report where you don't have to copy the person, but only cowards take that route.
Okay, yeah.
In Scientology, it's believed that you're doing this to put the person's ethics in, which is a weird use of the word in that Scientology has adopted. Put a person's ethics in for their own best future survival. So just ratting someone out doesn't actually put the person's ethics in. Confronting them on it is what's supposed to put their ethics in and enhance their future survival. And so a really good Scientologist would not necessarily go behind someone's back. Okay, so you said, so how do you feel about people who reported you? Oh yeah, it would make me furious. So in Scientology, they call it KR Wars. KR is knowledge report.
Knowledge report.
So KR Wars is you write a KR on me.
Oh.
I write a KR on you for your false KR. So I write a false report on you. And then you write a false report on me. And these reports not only are going back and forth to each other, but every single one of them is going to the ethics officer. And they're called chit wars. An ethics chit. So chit wars.
So what's a chit?
A chit is an ethics chit, and a chit and a report can be used interchangeably. Okay. So a knowledge report, you would never say knowledge chit, but a knowledge report or an ethics chit is the same thing, two different words.
The KR wars sounds like the culture wars. It's Twitter. But that's the thing, isn't it? We're humans, and humans are going to do bad things. And I know I am. If I'm ever going to be worried about a person, if I'm ever going to be, I know I said before, I'm not going to judge other people, blah blah blah. But it's when they think that they're somehow morally virtuous and they have the moral truth, and that can happen on the right, the left, in various cults, and all those things. And I think, the kind of culture. I forgot what I was going to say. Fuck.
That's all right. I'll jump in. Yeah. Look, I have gone from having that Scientology, there's a Scientology brand of like puritanism,
Puritanism,
where
I don't know.
All these Scientologists, I say we, us formerly, convinced ourselves that we were the most ethical people in this sector of the Galactic Federation. And the fact is, Scientologists run around pretending to be great people when secretly, and I'm using this word almost jokingly, they are as horrible as everyone else. And it's one of these things where I have come from that, of being like, we're on this false moral podium, even if we're only pretending to be. And through our ethics and justice system, we're going to pull everyone else up to the level that we're only pretending to have attained. I've graduated from that to being like, I do not care whether someone is living some traditional spiritual values life. Everyone has some part of their life that they feel, oh my God, if everyone knew about this, if everyone knew this about me, I'd be in trouble. If everyone knew this about me, people would think less of me. Everyone has something like that. And if you think you don't, like, you're the one, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I now know what I was going to say about that, which was that I don't trust people who don't realize that humans are not necessarily evil, but they're not good either. We're just sort of animals who have evolved over many, many years. We evolved in tribes that had these kind of purity circles and purity cycles and things because it helped them to evolve. Because you needed to police other people to an extent in your tribe. If there was a tribe going around and nobody had an incentive, nobody felt good when they policed other people, anyone could just behave however they wanted all the time and would never get told off, would never have the equivalent of a knowledge report given to the head of the tribe. They would never be kicked out. How can a tribe like that work? So when you've got small groups of people going around the savannah, it makes sense that it feels good. Those of us who felt good policing others survived more. The problem is that's not very useful for us in today's society necessarily.
But when you, as you say that, I can't help but thinking, why not? And let me say, if we had a group of 30 friends, and let's say, I don't know, we were all going off on some excursion. We're going to go into the wilderness and we're going to camp. If someone was going around at night eating other people's food, we'd be like, oh, we're putting your ethics in. To use the Scientology words, oh, we're putting your ethics in.
That's why people don't like overweight people. No, it is. Because I did an episode recently with Dr. Giles Yeo, and I said to him, and because I want this channel to just be, I'm just going to ask things, and I'm not a horrible bigot, but I'm interested. And I said, why do many of us, I'm not saying me, but many of us have a visceral reaction where we go, oh God, look at that guy, he's fat. And we do it.
You're afraid he's going to eat your food?
Yeah. Well, we do it to ourselves as well. I've had times when I've been very overweight and I've gone, oh, look at you. But with other people, yeah, you're afraid that, are they going to eat your food? Are they going to be able to run as fast if we're trying to get away from a tiger? Are they, and this is unfair, Dr. Giles Yeo made me realize, but this is how we think. Are they going to be lazy because they are undisciplined, because they can't keep the fat off or whatever it is? What he explained is like the genetic differences are so vast that it's just some people, when I'm like, I'm full, unfortunately, they're not. And that's really hard, unfortunately.
When you put that in certain contexts, it makes sense.
Yeah.
When you put it in the context of society where we're all working from home anyway, and we're not having to run from tigers, and we're not having to hunt from food, and you can get food anywhere, then the caring about someone's weight makes less sense.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is this idea that any group is going to have, just organically, not with some leader dictating, any group is organically going to come up with behavior they don't find acceptable. And it's funny that so much of the culture war, not just presently, but just over time, is people disagreeing on where that line is now. Because people don't like when that line changes.
No. But just 200 years ago, that line, it was totally acceptable to keep slaves.
Right.
And if you had come out and said, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, you would have been the guy who gets excommunicated. And this is the fundamental mental lesson that I want people to learn at schools now, at high school and stuff. They still have to learn about the Nazis and all the other things, right? But I want one thing hammered home to all of these people, which, I forgot it again. The one most important thing ever. The one thing, I'm very tired. I've traveled out to Florida. I'll keep all those in. I like keeping those bits in because otherwise, like, I'm this professional guy who never loses my train of thought. I forgot it again. No, I haven't. Right. When I learned about slavery, I used to sit there daydreaming because I thought I was a great guy, and it feels good to feel like a great guy. That had I been around, I wish I'd been around at that time, because I would have stood up and told everyone not to do this, and it's a bad thing. And it completely misses the point about how important the culture we're in is, and how strong the responses of our peers is. Because the only reason I feel that way, I think I've learned to feel that slavery is bad, is because everybody in this time and culture would be going, clap, 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 well done, you're a great guy because you don't like slavery. Well, in that culture, everyone would have just said, oh, you're a loser, mate. Or something much stronger than that.
That's right.
So I wouldn't have been incentivized to do it.
That's right.
So, I mean, some of the stuff you've said to me before with Scientology, that there was nothing that anyone could have said.
No.
So there really wasn't like any, I could have just showed you, like, look, we know that Lord Xenu made up. Did you even know about Lord Xenu?
No. But I still will say and maintain, when I was in Scientology, true believer, especially in the Sea Org, There is nothing anyone could have ever shown me, said to me, or evidence you could have presented me with that would have changed how I felt about Scientology, what I believed about Scientology, or questioned my dedication to it. And that's because Scientologists believe that only Scientology is unplugging all of humanity from the matrix. This is a prison. We're trapped in these bodies. This is a prison. The bodies are prisons. The planet's a prison. The physical universe is a prison. And only Scientology can unplug people from the matrix. So if someone goes, L. Ron Hubbard was a bigamist, I'd go, what does that have to do with anything? David Miscavige beats his staff. So what? Who cares?
He's enforcing order.
Yeah, then they probably deserved it. Or Scientology infiltrated the government. Yeah, but the government's just a bunch of Agent Smiths. We are Morpheus and Neo and what was the girl? What was
Trinity.
Trinity. Yeah.
You sexist. Tell me more about the men in the Matrix.
I was going to say Catwoman. She did wear like a Catwoman outfit in that movie.
Yeah.
And so when you believe, I mean, it's a perfect example of when you believe very extreme, specific, almost militant things, you cannot divert someone from that. It's why so many people who leave Scientology end up leaving because something happened to them personally. There was some injustice, whether it was to them or someone they just were very much in love with or their family. Something happened to them personally that made them go, I can't put up with this anymore. And I will never try to make a blanket statement for all former Scientologists, but it's usually not, I'm not sure I believe this anymore. It's usually, I can't put up with how I'm being treated anymore.
Interesting.
And then once they have a little bit of the benefit of distance and time and space, they have their mind relaxes a little bit, and they're willing to reevaluate some of the stuff that they had left unquestioned.
Okay, so you know that I get a bit obsessed about evolutionary beliefs and evolutionary theory and biological evolution, and a lot of this stuff is all a bit wishy-washy because you can't really prove it. You can only make sort of speculation and go, okay, maybe we were like this in tribes and that's what's made us. But what you've just said implies to me that our beliefs are what we're incentivized to believe. So if your in-group is woke people, for example, you're at university and you're with all those people, you're incentivized to believe that there is injustice in the world based on like social hierarchies and things like that, and that there are not enough minorities on British TV screens, for example, which is provably false, very, very easily provably false. If you're in with a lot of people on the far right, you will want to believe that different minorities are stupider than others or whatever it might be without enough evidence to prove that kind of thing, because it feels good. And as soon as you get kicked out, which I've seen happen in Scientology, you get kicked out, you're no longer incentivized to have those beliefs. What's the point?
That's true.
And so it actually feels better to go, well, those guys who kicked me out, they're losers. And then the belief starts to change. So the feeling changes first and then the belief.
That is a really interesting thing to consider. Sort of the chicken and the egg problem. Like, what comes first, the relationships with your cohorts or the common beliefs, right? So, I mean, yeah, I don't know that I have a lot of well-formed thoughts on it, but it's true. Once you're out of Scientology, what is your incentives to still believe that Scientology is the one thing that's unplugging all of humanity from the matrix? You're not incentivized to. There's no benefit. There's no survival benefit to continuing to believe that. But I wonder if a Scientologist would say, "Yeah, but that's the only reason you stopped believing it is because it was no longer. It was now against your best interests to keep believing it because otherwise you would realize how bad it was that you got yourself kicked out. So you've had to convince yourself Scientology isn't helpful to people so that you can sleep at night."
Yes. Which is an amazing thought as well. Okay, they can use that the other way around. Yeah. You only don't believe because you're out and you have to not believe now.
You wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you still believed Scientology was the only thing unplugging people from the matrix.
Isn't it maybe depressing but maybe interesting that humans believe things not because they're true, but because it will make us feel better and fit in better with our tribe?
Wow, we got this deep without any weed or anything. No alcohol, no nothing. But let me ask you this. Do you think, taking like a half a step back to an earlier part of the conversation, do you think it's fair to just sort of superficially describe progressivism as people or a system of beliefs where they want that line, the line where society draws the line of saying, this is what we consider good behavior, this is what we consider bad behavior, that a progressive is someone who wants that line to gradually move forward with time, and that is virtuous. That change over time is virtuous. It's aspiring to be better, to do better. And if you are aspiring to be better and do better, that line is going to be changing over time. And if it's not changing, it's a problem. Whereas conservatism is, we really like that line and we don't want that line to change. Is that too superficial of a description, or could that work?
I think it works. Yes, I do think it works. And what I would say to the progressive side then is that's this idea of the arrow of progress, and it's a fallacy. It's an idea that we're always making progress, and it's a really subjective idea, because at any point the global population would believe that they are at the pinnacle of progress. So when they had slavery, they would be sitting around going, well, this is it. We moved towards the goal.
That's interesting.
And we look back and we go, you guys went really wrong there, but you thought you'd moved forward. The Stasi, they thought they'd moved forward. They thought that was the way to be. So every time a society will think, particularly if something's popular in the culture, which progressivism is, even if conservatism tends to be more popular the way people vote, people will start to think, we finally made it. This is the true truth. We're so much more better informed than people before. So is it really better today that we've got gay people who think that this trans agenda is, or ideology is, conservative and homophobic? We've got more division than ever. You know, somebody was saying to me the other day that they didn't like Trump. They don't like Trump being in charge. And I understand that. I don't really like Trump myself. I'm scared of saying that as well, in case some people in the purity spiral get upset with me. But I don't. I think he's stupid. I know people think he's clever because he got in. I don't. I think he's funny. He is quite funny. We're moving to a place where we're so divided, we're so far on each side, and each side is so clear on this idea that we're more progressive than ever. The conservative side, of course, also has this, you guys have gone so wrong, you're so stupid, we've got all the right answers, which is not necessarily true either. But we're just creating more and more division. Trump is a result of that ultra-progressivism, just as Biden is a result of that ultra-Trumpism.
What you said about, at any age in society, the most, or the sector, the people, the word,
the mainstream, the core.
No, not the core. I don't want to use the word woke because it's
the enlightened,
the most enlightened, the part of society who consider themselves to be the most enlightened. They never think they haven't made it all the way. They think they are the pinnacle. Yeah. This would be an amazing experiment. You mentioned to me there's this channel. What's the name of the channel where he does the experiments?
Peter Boghossian.
Okay, he does that experiment. Yeah. Those videos are amazing to see how they work out. How about an experiment where someone takes a group of people who are considered to popularly represent whatever the most enlightened progressives are. I don't know who in your mind in society, maybe American society or European society, pop culture wise, is like sort of the mascot for the most enlightened progressive.
There'd be British people. There's like a journalist called Owen Jones, for example.
Okay.
So you know, before knowing who he is, you know exactly what his beliefs are on every single topic.
So what about an experiment of him and people like him being asked that question 20 years from now? Where would we have to be in order to have that arrow of progress? And see if they go, no. We've done it now. We're there.
Oh, no, they won't say they're there because then they don't have anything to do.
Or the world isn't there. He's there. What's his name?
Oh, yes, Owen Jones.
He'll say, no. I and my friends are there. We just need to get all the racists up to where I am.
Yes.
But you go, okay, but in 20 years, where would you and your friends need to be in order to be traveling the arrow of progress?
Or in 20 years, I mean, a similar thing, but do you think people might, I mean, and I know the answer to this because they always say that history will look back kindly on their views. To have that kind of certainty is really scary. And also, what does it really mean? So and a lot of people say history will vindicate me, history will show in the future. But is that the history of the people in 20 years or in 100 years or in 200 years? Now, in 200 years, they might have slavery again and think that's a good idea and say what idiots we were. Or in 300 years, they might then, all sorts of mad different things. The idea that there is a very objective truth of morality is just mad, and the idea that we know what it is. So I think all you can do is maybe just be humble and understand there are 7 or 8 billion people on the planet who all have slightly different views, and let's try and make the most of what is a very difficult Lord of the Flies experiment.
Right. You know, what about this though? Because to me, we just talked about the fact that the arrow of progress is sort of a fallacy, right? And yet one can look over time, even short spans of time of 10 or 20 or 30 years, and see things from back then that seemed normal, and now we go, oh yeah, no, that was messed up. Now things less I'm not talking about the big things like slavery, but even like my childhood growing up, homophobia was not just, it wasn't even considered homophobia, it was considered normal. Like it wasn't called homophobia because being homophobic was the normal. There wasn't a word for it, or at least maybe there was, but as a child it was like we're not homophobic.
It meant like kicking a gay guy physically. It meant like going and actually like punching a gay guy. That was homophobia back then. Whereas now,
so I'm being a little inarticulate about this. When I was a child, I remember just through how I grew up in school, not in the home, but actually in school, that like being gay, there's something actually wrong with you. Like there's something like that's something wrong with you. I'm sorry. To me, it's just self-evident that it can't be wrong with you. It's part of nature. Like you're born that way.
So that's
something wrong with you.
That might have gotten better, right? But what Andrew Doyle was saying is homophobia now was fantastic 15 years ago. He said that was when you were at school and when I was at school, it was bad. And then there was a period in like the 2010s when we just sort of got it right. And now it was never going to come from the same place because everyone's worried about how it was. It wasn't going to go back to how it was. The same reason you get like the Nazis, you don't suddenly get like the Nazis again. You get the left-wing version, and because everyone's worrying about the thing that happened last time. But you know, of course, we think that now this is right, and we go, God, I can't believe what I thought before. Now, I would like to just make it very clear that I think homophobia is wrong, but I'm a product of my environment. So maybe in 1,000 years, they're like, no, it was wrong to be gay, or you know, it was wrong to be Jewish, or it was wrong. I don't really believe those things. I want to make that very clear before people take that out of context and say that I am saying that.
That's going to be clipped.
But okay, I mean, one example, I'm a vegetarian, right? But maybe,
and I don't hold that against you.
Well, I don't hold it against. But and also, I'm not one of those who, as I was saying to you before, when I was coming over, I was like, I know I'm the weird one. And I don't want other people to have to like go like, oh God, he's coming. I'm gonna have to get some salad or whatever. Like I'll try and sort it out. I don't want people to have to walk around me because of my differences. But I want to be a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian. Whatever. Maybe in 100 years they'll look back and think we were like, for eating meat, we were like the Nazis.
They're gonna say, thank God the vegetarians didn't reproduce.
Yeah, well, exactly. When none of us can get girlfriends or whatever. Or they'll look back in 100 years and go, those vegetarians, what was wrong with them? Because it's a normal thing for humans to do this. It's been human evolution. They've eaten meat and all of those things. So what was wrong with those guys? What a bunch of weirdos. Well, a lot of progressives, maybe even me, I would frame vegetarianism as a progressive move. Oh, this is better than it was 20 years ago. But what's the right answer? Well, in 100 years, you get a different answer to in 200 years. So morality, I think, is just subjective. And again, I think there is of course an arc, because a gradual arrow of things seem to be getting better. There's less poverty in the world than there was. We also feel like things are getting worse all the time because we have a natural propensity to fear the end of the world. Yeah. So in the 60s or now, it's like, God, the end of the world is right around the corner. Yeah. Did you have any of that in Scientology? Is there any end of the world?
Yes, because L. Ron Hubbard said that without enough people getting into Scientology and doing enough of Scientology, the natural consequence would be for humanity to wipe itself out of existence through nuclear war. And what's funny is that, remember, Scientologists don't believe that bodies are not life, the spirit is the life. So the problem with wiping out humanity wasn't that humanity would be wiped out. It's that Scientology would be lost. Oh. Yeah. It wasn't the loss of humanity itself that was the problem. It's that nobody would be around to practice Scientology, and it would make it harder to restart Scientology when civilization repopulated Earth. It would just delay. Because once you unplug everyone from the Matrix here on Earth, you then have to do it in every other planet of the Galactic Federation, and then eventually every planet in the universe. Scientologists believe in very much like the Star Wars, Star Trek version of life on pretty much every planet or around every star system. And so you just imagine like space Scientologists running around auditing people with e-meters and stuff like that. So, so there was sort of this existential life is going to end, but not like. It doesn't really create an existential crisis. It just makes Scientologists feel like they need to put in more hours at the org and donate more money and get more people into Scientology.
Isn't it amazing that you managed to leave? And for those who want to know more about Aaron's story, we've done it loads on my other channel, on your channel. We'll put all of that in the description, of course. But you left, and a lot of people left, and then somehow remained a bit culty in some ways, not you necessarily. And then you were kicked out of the anti-science, the anti-Scientology thing that you started. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, the truth is, I was just kicked off of a board of a foundation. The other board members aren't representative of the former Scientology or anti-Scientology community. I mean, in fact, you could make the argument that I'm more representative because I've received more of the support since the departure.
But they are prominent former Scientologists.
Yeah.
Well, some were very high up.
Yeah.
And they've left. The idea is they've put the whole dogma and the whole I'm judging everyone for doing things wrong behind them, and yet here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to chalk it up more to personal differences and friendships being poorly handled than necessarily, like, I would even be so gracious as to say, I wouldn't say that they tried to cancel me. Okay. They didn't necessarily try to run some campaign to get me. It was me who thought that I couldn't survive socially in our little group if the group thought that these people didn't think very highly of me and didn't really want to be associated with me anymore. I thought that was social death. I thought I would be canceled whether they intended it or not. Right. Yeah. And so to a certain extent, and I guess this does have some parallels to the social conversation, to a certain extent that gave them power over me that I actually didn't even realize I was giving them. Like, oh my goodness, if I get in Mike Rinder's disfavor,
as former Scientologist,
I'll be canceled. People will have no respect for me. People will wonder what's wrong with me. If Mike Rinder ever says anything against me, I'm finished. Well, it turns out almost the opposite was true. And so I don't know if I directly answered your question.
Well, what I'd say about that, a lot of people sometimes say there isn't cancel culture because the result was that you haven't been cancelled necessarily.
Right. That's right.
But the culture was there.
You're right.
The culture of cancelling.
Yeah. I think they thought they did what they did because they thought, I truly believe the following. They thought that I thought that if I ever said anything against them, I would be canceled, and therefore they were safe in doing whatever they wanted to me. Because they were like, well, he'll never, if he criticizes us, he's done in our community.
Yeah. I'm conscious people listening will be going, or watching will be saying, what did he do?
Oh, you know what? So I've been married for 20 years. The last 4 or 5 years, I get a little loose with the years as the years go by because of COVID and messed up my memory of time. But for the last 4 or 5 years, my wife and I have basically been separated, living together. For a long time, I described this as an open marriage because I didn't know what other language to use.
Okay.
But for people to understand the actual nature of the relationship, we were separated, living together. Now, what that means in real terms is for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been doing whatever I want in my private and romantic life, and I encourage my wife to do the same. We basically stayed together for the kids. So what happened is in May of this last year, when I was in LA covering the Danny Masterson trial, which has a Scientology component to it.
That's the actor from that 70s show who went to prison for doing horrible things to women.
That's right. There was a fan of my channel who showed up to court. And I don't care. Her name's Juliana Cohen. I mean, there's a million Juliana Cohens. That's not doxing someone. Her name's Juliana Cohen. And since she spent 8 months trying to destroy my life, I think the least I can do is say her full name.
I might block it out.
If you want to. Totally your call.
Sure.
So she came to the court. She came to court. She offered to basically take me out and show me around, and she wanted to hook up. And so we hooked up for a few days during, I don't know, the 4 to 6 weeks I was covering the trial. She stayed with me for a few nights at my hotel. The last night she stayed with me, I asked her very politely. Now, of course, people will say, well, of course, this is your version of the story. Yes, this is my version of the story. Believe it or don't believe it. Very politely asked her to leave. She then proceeded to trash the hotel room, try to break all of my equipment. Cut my toe wide open. I found out later it was actually broken. And anyway, this whole thing happened. And this is what I'm going to, permission to ramble a little bit?
Go on. Yeah.
Okay. Compared to me, I'm a big guy, 220. She's probably 110, half my size. I'm thinking, I'm a target for Scientology. If the police show up, I'm done for. Okay. So as all this is going on, I'm thinking, I have to do everything in my power to get this person out of this hotel without someone calling the police. And I'm describing it this way because I had every incentive to have de-escalation skills that could have resolved the Middle East conflict. Okay. And somehow I managed to get her out of the hotel room. It was because I was seriously injured and actually had to beg her to help me go get treatment for my foot. Anyway, the story gets even a little crazier for what happened after we got out of the hotel and down the street and everything. Anyway, it turns out she then turned around and accused everyone in my community, or accused me to everyone in my community, of having actually abused her and beat her up severely. And she said, I would never go to the police. I would never, all I want is for Aaron to be removed from the Aftermath Foundation. Now, do I think this was a Scientology setup? No, I do not. I've been very consistent about that. I know a lot of people do. I don't. I think it's just a crazy person who behaved in a crazy manner. I don't have all the answers. This is someone who'd been institutionalized before this incident. I had later found out she was institutionalized after this incident. Her story changes all the time. Her father's an attorney. She never went to the police. By the way, her story changes. Some people, she says, I went to the police, but they didn't believe me and they wouldn't take a report. I'm sorry. It's not the police's job to believe you. They would have taken a report. Other people, she says, I would never go to the police because that would hurt the cause. And I support the cause. She pretends to support the anti-Scientology cause.
Okay.
But she just wanted to protect the foundation from me. She wanted to protect my kids. Anyway, she's a crazy person. Okay. Well, she went to the board members and said, all I want is for Aaron to be removed from the Aftermath Foundation. And so the majority of the board members, not including Luis Garcia, the founder, who supported me through all of this. Anyway, shortly hereafter, Luis Garcia was forced out by Claire Headley. I was forced out by Mike Rinder. And it was basically Aaron's too much of a liability for us to continue to associate with him. We have to protect the foundation from him. Now, it's kind of a specious argument. Like, what does it mean to protect the foundation? Like, this is the Aftermath Foundation that exists to help people who are leaving Scientology. Like, can we raise money from people to help people leaving Scientology? And can we put that money to work helping people who are leaving Scientology? What does the personal and private lives of the board members have anything to do with the foundation's ability to execute on that? And anyway, without rehashing every little bit, I think to the viewers who have no idea what we're talking about, now they know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I was put in a position where I was forced to resign. And then when my resignation was going to become effective, Leah Remini intervened and told them they were being foolish. And then they unanimously voted to keep me on the board. And then they don't like, and I'm not saying this as my opinion. I'm saying this as what they have said to me.
Yeah.
They don't like the videos that I do on my channel and how I will occasionally go after people. They think I go a little too hard. I criticize people who they would rather I not criticize. I say things they would rather I not say. And what really happened is it wasn't about whether it impacted the Aftermath Foundation's ability to execute on its purpose. It impacted whether they wanted to be known as an associate of mine in our community. It got to a point where they didn't want to be like, yeah, Aaron's our guy. They didn't want Aaron to be their guy anymore. And they thought they could get away with getting rid of me and having there be no consequences in our community for doing so. And that was where they misestimated. Because the community that supports the foundation is not ex-Scientologists. It's people who've never had anything to do with Scientology that live all over the world that see what we're doing and understand people aren't perfect. And why are ex-Scientologists still carrying around some superior sense of morality and virtue, that in order to associate with us, you have to be of a particular caliber and a standard, good sir. And no, look,
I do declare.
But see, but the conversation does immediately go back to this idea of like, but of course, there's always a line. There's got to be a line somewhere. Where is that line? Well, basically what has happened is that the community, who for the last 6 years supported the foundation that me and Luis Garcia ran, the other board members did not run the foundation, me and Luis did. The community has saw what happened and goes, we never thought or expected Aaron to be perfect or even good. What he is pretty honest and forthright and transparent, and he's got a lot of reach, and he promotes the foundation, and he raises a lot of money, and he helps a lot of people. And they said, we don't actually give a damn what Aaron's doing in his private life. Has he been charged with anything? Has he been arrested for anything? Has he been convicted of anything? Is he doing anything that an awful lot of people in society do anyway, but maybe like pretend they're too afraid for people to... Oh, because you said, what did he do? The worst thing of all of this is having a woman half my size accuse me of having beaten the tar out of her. It was provably false. She has a TikTok account. She did TikTok videos the very next day showing not a mark on her. And plus, I'm a big guy. Someone explain how we got out of that hotel without someone calling the police if anything this girl said was true. Everything out of her mouth was a complete lie. But I actually I said, I don't know that I can survive being accused of this. I said, I don't think I can survive being accused of this. Because I'll be honest, I am someone who tends to believe that if you're accused of something, you did it. Like, that's something I take from Scientology. Scientology will believe something. Hey, if you're being accused of something, you might not have done this, but let's be honest, you did something else. Scientology is very, very much like not about protecting individual rights or anything. It's about if someone's looking at you and accusing you of something, you pulled that in. Like that's a concept that exists in Scientology. Mm-hmm. You're responsible for anything that happens to you. So if something bad is happening to you, even if you did something to deserve that. So if you've got a woman accusing you of something, you either did that or you've done something else, which is why you deserve what's happening to you right now. I'll be honest. That is a mindset that has taken me, and I might be giving myself too much credit to say that I've fully let go of that. That is a mindset that I took from Scientology. It took me a lot of time after leaving Scientology to even understand the concept of what civil rights were even about, or constitutional protections, or protections from unwarranted search and seizure. Because I'm someone who thinks, you did something.
But that's also a very human urge, and I've often wondered. There's a lot to unpack in what you've just said as well. It's complicated, isn't it? Firstly, there were a few things that you got sort of found to have done, and the videos have gone around social media and stuff. I mean, you're also the victim of a cult. I mean, your upbringing. You grew up. Your channel is called Growing Up in Scientology.
I don't blame anything about my behavior on having grown up in Scientology, and that's something that's been falsely said about me. Oh, Aaron said the reason he does X, Y, and Z is because he's still damaged from Scientology. Those words have never come out of my mouth. I've never said such a thing. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Well, they came out of my mouth. I think it.
I understand. But I'm being a little defensive here. But I want to say something. When I was running for Clearwater City Council 2 years ago, I ended up getting into an altercation at a bar on Clearwater Beach. And this was newsworthy because I was running for Clearwater City Council at the time. And in response to that news article, my crisis management advisor, I issued a statement to the newspaper that did make it seem that I was copping to what I was being accused of in that altercation and blaming it on my Scientology upbringing. And what I actually meant when I mentioned Scientology was alluding to the actual state of my marriage. That my marriage was not what everyone thought it was. Yeah. And that's what I meant when I wrote that statement. And I realize we're into the weeds here. I just wanted to say this for the record.
But I feel like you might feel you need to say that or even need to think that.
Yes.
But you did grow up in a very extreme destructive cult. It doesn't mean you're excused of anything, but it's relevant, in my opinion. And maybe it's better you don't even agree to or say that, because then people will use that against you. Oh, he thinks it's all because of that. Fine. I think it, though. I think it would have done something.
You are right in stating it, and yet I will still say I will never excuse any bad behavior by saying, oh, I grew up in a cult. I'm just saying, because it's not how I think at all.
But that's why I think it's right for me to think it.
Okay.
But
fair enough.
But it's a complicated thing, and I guess like I said, it feels good kicking people out, and I wonder to what extent Scientology, and I think Scientology is just an extension of how we really are, because we do think he's being stopped and searched, he probably did something. He's overweight, he probably did this thing. We do think a lot of things, and we do have to stop ourselves sometimes. And I think I do really feel like this Scientology, but also woke culture, also the alt-right or the far right or any of these things, you get to this point when you really are quite extreme and you really do want to police the language and other things of other people. And I just think Scientology is an extreme version of that. Humans do that. It's not that you're now out of Scientology, and so now because you're just a human who's not in Scientology, you're not going to judge people with prejudice. We right. do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where can people find your channel and everything?
Growing Up in Scientology.
Yeah, it's quite easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just go to Growing Up in Scientology because he grew up in Scientology. I've done stuff with Aaron for years. There's loads of me on his channel, him on my channel. So please do follow Aaron. I've got another question in a second though, but follow Aaron, and he is the guy for Scientology. It's absolutely fascinating stuff. So please follow him, and I'll put another link in the description and everything like that. Who is, and I forgot to ask you this earlier to think of one, who's a heretic that you admire?
Oh, boy.
You can think for a while and we can cut it because I forgot to ask you before.
Oh, my God. I'm going to give an answer that's going to make me look superficial and Cliché.
Pamela Anderson. No.
I'm sorry, the first answer that comes to mind is Elon Musk.
Okay.
And that's going to get me canceled. I'm going to lose half my subscribers. I see him as a heretic. For me, the guy who's one of the most famous, wealthiest individuals in the world, I think it's easy to believe that in order to get into that position, you have to be lockstep with the establishment that, I don't know, controls, that gatekeeps so much of society, whether it's media or the corporate world or finance world. And to see the guy who's pretty much the guy, no matter whether you love him or hate him, to see him taking on the establishment, to me that's being a heretic. And someone might go, oh, it's easy for him, no matter, even if he loses 90% of his wealth, he's still a billionaire. I go, I think it's a very interesting conversation to say, who is it easiest for to take hard positions? Someone with everything to lose or someone with nothing to lose? I don't know. For whom should it be easier? Because I would argue that for someone with an awful lot to lose, it's not actually as easy as people think. And that he is putting his neck out there. And again, I say that whether you agree with him or not agree with him, love him or hate him, I go, that to me is hereticism. Is that a word?
Probably. I never want to sort of go, that's a word and that isn't, because it's always evolving.
It's a word now.
People know what you're saying. I suppose heresy is the word, isn't
Heresy.
it? But hereticism is fine as well.
I like hereticism.
I agree with you, and I think we do. Another point. I think maybe something to sum up what we've just spoken about for over an hour. I've lost it again. That's what sums up the episode. Wait, what did you just say?
Hereticism, Elon Musk, gatekeeping, media, business, finance.
Is that humans will do bad when they can. When you are in a society where slavery is permitted, you will do bad. You will do that, and because you think it's good. If you're in a society where it's just acceptable to round up the Jews, most people will do that. Obviously, there are people who speak out, but most people will be bad when they can. Right now, we're in a society where you can be racist, and people will still applaud and say, "Well done." It just has to come from one side. It has to be against, the people that are seen as the go on.
I wonder if when you say when they can, do you mean when it's incentivized, or do you just mean when they're able to?
If you're not going to be punished. I think we will start to do horrible things. And so one of the things I was going to say is we dehumanize ultra-rich people.
That's true.
So on both sides of the spectrum, we do that. That's one thing where the right and the left can agree that, vaccinations, Bill Gates must be doing awful things. Tom Hanks is all the things about him with no evidence that I've seen. Super rich people. So Elon Musk, who cares about his feelings? He's got all this money to protect him. Well, money doesn't protect him against millions of people saying horrible things to him. Now, he maybe deserves it, maybe doesn't. But the fact that he has that money doesn't really, it makes his life much easier in many other respects. But criticism and things like that, and you're right, he doesn't have to do this. He can just go sit on a yacht for the rest of his life. So I like him. And one of the most heretical things he said recently was, do good things, don't just say that you're doing good things. Yes. And that caused a controversy. So think of that. Go and follow Aaron, Growing Up in Scientology. It's just the best channel on Scientology and cults and things like that. And keep watching this channel. I'll put a thing here of a similar thing. And hit the like button.